difficult to witness the suffering of someone you love. Sometimes it's worse than experiencing the suffering yourself. A tremendous crowd of people is on its way into Jerusalem for the festival of Passover. Passover marks God's deliverance of God's people from slavery in Egypt. When God saw that suffering and said, "Enough is enough," God's people were commanded to make sacrifice and spread the blood on the lintels and the doorposts of their houses as a sign. Then the angel of God passed over the doorways of an entire nation and struck down the firstborn of Pharaoh and everyone down in every Egyptian household beneath him. And the Exodus account says that there was not a house without its dead. And on that night, the doorways of the people of God swung open, and they left that land as free people for the first time in 400 years. And they would journey for another 40 years through the wilderness en route to a promised land. The people of God were commanded to commemorate the Passover for all time, a way of remembering the lengths that God will go to deliver us from evil. This morning, we are at this particular Passover festival, and there are some Greeks there. Not Jewish by birth, they are perhaps from a group that came to be known as the God-fearers. These were converts to the monotheism of Israel who adopted certain observances of Judaism. And a group of them approached Jesus' disciples with a really straightforward request. We wish to see Jesus. I don't know why, but their request shifts some tectonic plate of Jesus' destiny, and he announces the hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. We could be forgiven for thinking that glory here is a great thing. Fame, followers, recognition. However, in John's gospel, glory is inseparable from Jesus' crucifixion and death. This is the meaning of the final line of today's gospel. And I, when I am lifted up from the earth, will draw all people to myself. He said this to indicate the kind of death he was to die. The 16th century church reformer Martin Luther said that there are two kinds of theologians in the world: theologians of glory and theologians of the cross. By default, you and I are theologians of glory. Left to our own devices, every single one of us chooses the glory road, the detour around suffering, the spiritual smugness and certainty that we are in the right crowd, whether we define that by denomination or race or socioeconomic status. The theologian of glory goes to church, to be sure, but he prays like the Pharisee in the parable, "Oh Lord, thank you that I do all these things right and I'm not like that tax collector over there." Meanwhile, the tax collector doesn't dare even look up and praise to God for forgiveness and mercy, which he knows he desperately needs. The theologian of glory wants Easter, but no Good Friday. The glory without the cross. The theologian of glory wishes to see Jesus, but made in her own image. Back in seminary, a Lutheran professor of mine once declared, "The only way you know you're not using God to your own ends is if you're being crucified by him." I hate that quote. I hate that quote because I found it to be true. The people, the well-meaning, God-fearing people with their honest and their straightforward requests, their wish to see Jesus. And I can imagine that he wishes to be able to say to them, "Come on in and follow me, the water's great." And it's smooth sailing and a clear path, and it's well lit, and a voice is always telling you which way to turn. And others will see that you're doing your best and give you the benefit of the doubt, and you'll beat the addictions and the illness, and your kids are going to turn out fine, and they're holding that job just for you. And you're going to find your soulmate, and for sure you'll make rent this month, and the climate is going to be just fine. But Jesus doesn't say that. Because unlike the false prophets of glory, Jesus refuses to tell us what we want to hear. For unlike us, Jesus is the first theologian of the cross who came to see that all reality had a cruciform shape and was somehow deeply touched and marked by suffering and loss, and that there was no way around that. And the weight of that knowledge in our story leads him to declare, "Now my soul is troubled." If there's a detour, God, please show it to me. If I can somehow do an end run around the suffering and sacrifice, and we could call that your will, then I choose door number 1. And now we've come to perhaps the fundamental prayer of the Gospels, which plays out in parallel in the Garden of Gethsemane. And what should I say? "Father, save me from this hour"? No, it is for this reason that I have come to this hour. And in that prayer, Jesus chooses to align himself to continue in the fellowship with the God that he called Father, for the sake of you and me. Sir, we wish to see Jesus. I tell you, my friends, he is not behind door number 1. I wish he were. No. Jesus is behind door number 2, the one marked with blood on the lintels and the doorposts. The door that God and God alone knows must be open to open out into freedom and to pass through the place of death and suffering. And Jesus was willing to endure all that out of his great love for you and for me. The book of Hebrews says that for the joy that was set before him, Jesus endured the cross. I don't understand it. I do believe it. It's at this point of relinquishment that Jesus hears a voice from heaven. "I have glorified my name, and I will glorify it again." But just not in the way we would have expected it or wished to see it. The crowd was standing there, and some said it was thunder, others said it was an angel. Perhaps both were right. For when the angel of God passes overhead and your front door swings open, you better start walking whether it is rain or shine. For if the place that you're standing now is slavery and freedom is over there, then the only way out is through. Through the threshold into the wilderness and toward a land of promise that you cannot see yet, but it's there. Irish band U2 have a song titled MLK for Martin Luther King Jr. It's almost a kind of lullaby, and the words go like this: "Sleep, sleep tonight, and may your dreams be realized. If the thundercloud passes rain, so let it rain. Rain down on he, so let it be. So let it be. Amen.